A Wrinkle in Time. Meg Murray, a high school girl, is transported through time and space with her younger brother Charles Wallace and friend Calvin O'Keefe to rescue her father. Her father is a gifted scientist who has been captured by the evil forces and is being held prisoner. Meg is a plainly looking, awkward but caring girl who is very insecure and is greatly concerned for her father, who has been gone for over a year. One dark and stormy evening, Mrs. Whatsit arrives at the Murray's house. Mrs. Whatsit is a supernatural person with the power to read Meg's thoughts. While at the house, she tells everyone, to their surprise, about the Tesseract. The Tesseract is the wrinkle in space and time through which Meg and the others will travel to the fifth dimension to find Mr. Murray. The next day, Meg, Charles, and Calvin walk to Mrs. Whatsit's cabin. At the cabin, Mrs. Whatsit is with her friends Mrs. Who and Mrs. Witch. They tell the three kids that the universe is threatened by the dark thing that is taking the form of a giant cloud and engulfing the stars around it. Several planets have already been engulfed, including Camazotz, the planet where Mr. Murray is. The three kids are transported by the Mrs. W's to Camazotz via the Tesseract. They are told to always remain together as they try and find Mr. Murray. On Camazotz, everything is exactly alike because the planet is controlled by it, a floating brain. Charles tries to fight it, but instead it overwhelms him and takes control of him like a robot. It uses Charles to draw the other two in, and eventually Meg and Calvin try to fight it, but however, they are no match. Right before it is about to take control of them, Mr. Murray comes to rescue them and brings them away by tessering, which is using a tesseract to travel. Mr. Murray brings them to a gray planet called Ixchel. The planet is full of tall, furry beings who care for them, but Charles remains back on Camazotz, controlled by it. While at Ixchel, the Mrs. W's appear. Meg realizes she must go back to Camazotz to save her brother, and the Mrs. W's tell her that she has one thing that it does not, and it is her only weapon to beat it, but she has to figure it out on her own. Meg arrives back on Camazotz and finally realizes what she has is love. Meg uses all her concentration to focus on how much she loves her brother, and boom, her brother is freed from the control of it. They both hop on a Tesser and land back on Earth in their vegetable garden at their house, where Calvin and Mr. Murray are waiting for them.